CJ Peterson, and welcome to The Journey is Real. We talk to real people with real passions, excuse me, sorry, who share a real portion of the heart. Today, my guest is Thane Ringler. Thank you for coming on today, Thane.
Thanks for having me, CJ.
Today, we're going to be talking about his passion, which is guiding others to be their best self. We decided to go ahead and title this podcast, Game Changer, Don't Settle, Take Ownership of Your Life. Would you mind explaining to those, before we jump into your ventures, because I know you have quite a few of them, why we titled it that way?
Yeah, over the last couple of years, I've been on this entrepreneurial journey. I played golf my whole life and ended up playing professionally for almost 4 years. And that was a really neat endeavor, but it didn't end up how I had expected. And in that pivot, in that transition, I really felt called to helping others. And I didn't know really what that looked like. I just knew that there was some disciplines and habits and systems that I had done for myself as an athlete, and I wanted to bring that to other people. Now, over those years, that has solidified into really a clear mantra or rally cry that I'm really standing behind and pushing forward now. And that's this idea of taking ownership and never settling. And I think that these two core components are crucial to living a good life and to really being the fullness of who we are created, equipped, and called to be. Every individual has a unique gifting and calling and a unique life experience. And my heart and passion is for the people that have their means taken care of, their surviving is kind of taken care of, and are just coasting or settling for the status quo or what they think is the acceptable life. I'm really wanting to challenge
the boat sort of idea.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm really wanting to challenge them and say, hey, your life isn't as fulfilling as you think it should be because you're settling, because you're not taking ownership. And so that's was true for me in golf. In golf, it's an individual sport. You're kind of on an island. There's no teammates to blame, no referees, no coaches. Everyone has to play in the weather. So you have to take full ownership for the results, both the good and the bad. And then you also can't settle for less than you're capable of. There's so many good golfers out there that if I settle for a lesser than my ability in any shot, I'm going to be losing a stroke on the field. And so it's true in life as well. And we're all human, and our default is to go down the path of least resistance. And so we're going to be going downstream unless we make a decision to go upstream. And that takes effort and intention to not settle for going downstream. And ultimately, effort plus intention is discipline.
Right.
So that's kind of my mantra, my MO, and what I'm really trying to bring to more people in the world.
Right. Well, on The Journey is Real, we like to get the backstory. What brought you to this point? Would you mind sharing with listeners kind of what brought you to the point? You talked about the golfing, but what kind of take us along that journey a little bit for you? Kind of
totally
down.
And I love your tagline, real people, real passions, real hearts. And to be honest, it's really easy to talk into a microphone. Talking into a microphone, sharing this conversation is super easy. What's really hard is living this in real time in daily life. And really, we all learn what not to do before we learn what to do. So same is true for me. I learned in younger years how living one way and saying another thing just isn't going to produce good results. And I'm a Christian, and I claim to be a Christian at a young age, but I lived a double life. I claim to be this, but I live this way. And it was about 7 years of my life where I did that and thought I could get away with that, or thought I was good enough for that, or I could be kind of multiple people within that. And really God and the life and the experiences converged in junior year of college, where I was the team captain of the golf team, and we did some things we shouldn't have done and got in trouble with our school. We lost eligibility for nationals that year, and lost eligibility my senior year as well, because we withdrew our bid after we'd already qualified. And, that was a pretty hard consequence and pill to swallow, along with all of my past mistakes kind of coming to surface and having to come to terms and take ownership for the lies and deceit I had been living out. And that was really I think the first big failure, where I was like, man, this doing one thing and saying another is not a good life, and not cohesive to who I want to be and what my giftings and talents for the world are, and what God calls me to be. And so that was the first one.
God gives us that free will, and with that free will comes, the blessings and the consequences. And everyone says that phrase, that darn free will, because it could get you or it could bless you. You have to make your choices, because either way, God knows what they are and he knows where your heart is. And if you're not walking the walk that you're talking, you're going to get found out eventually. And
you know what's
learn the hard
yeah.
way.
And you know what's cool is, like, you don't even have to be a Christian to know that the validity and benefit of that. Everyone hates a hypocrite. It doesn't matter who you are. If you see anyone saying, "Oh, I'm this," and then you see them living completely differently, no one likes that. No one respects that.
No,
And
it's
that's
going to
not
turn
someone
off.
that's not a leader. That's not someone we want to follow. That's not someone we want to look to in any way. And so it was really true for me. And it's funny because what you just brought up there is the responsibility aspect. And it's funny because in golf, as a kid, I was drawn towards golf because I could take full ownership of the results. I was like, man, I don't want to have to depend on other teammates for my success. I'm good enough. I can do it on my own, and as a kid,
I could get you in trouble too.
yeah, it's true. As a kid, it's naive and ignorant, but the older you get, you're like, oh, if I have to take full ownership for my successes, that means all my failures too.
Exactly.
And it's a scary, hard place to be. It really is.
Definitely.
So that was a big part of the first one. And the second one really was coming out of golf. And just to touch on that briefly, a lot of what keeps us back from moving forward on what we feel called to, or what we really want to bring into the world, or how we want to help others, is often a fear of failure. And this fear of failure is universal. We all experience it. And it causes us to just not move forward. And for me, I really faced that in golf, because after 4 years playing professionally and over 20 years, my whole life competing in it, I was faced with this point of, do I continue moving forward and try to push through, or do I pivot into a new path? And that pivoting was really scary, because it feels like you are a failure. And that's the danger of identity, is that when we attach our identity to what we do instead of who we are, then we associate a failure within what we do as, I am a failure. And that's a really scary place to be. So going through that was really helpful in teaching me that our identity is not found in what we do. It's who we are as human beings. And that's never defined by a job title. And second is that failure is a stepping stone to success, in the sense that it again informs us what isn't good, and helps us understand what is good, what the proper way of doing things is. And if that means pivoting, well, we often think that that's a dead end and we have to go all the way back to the beginning again. But in reality, the experiences and lessons of that journey will have us 10 steps ahead of the start line anyways. And we just turn into a new direction, maybe take a few steps back, but we don't have to go all the way back to the beginning again. I think that's a really freeing and empowering place to be.
Well, and sometimes when we go to try to help somebody, we become self-conscious ourselves of, is this something that I can do? Is this something that I can approach? Who am I to help this one person? Who am I to help guide this person? Because you guide other people to be their strongest self. And inside yourself, you're like questioning, is this something I can really do? I mean, I was a youth leader for 18 years, and now I talk to people on a podcast. I'm also an author and a blogger. And, I talk to people all the time. And I have a lot of life experience, unfortunately, or fortunately, because it made me who I was, who I am, and who I am today. And that life experience has helped me to guide a lot of teens through stuff that would normally be very scary to walk through. Had I not already done it, it allows me to help others through it. When you go to take that step to go to help somebody, how did you get over that hurdle of, am I good enough to do this? Who am I? I'm young. Who am I to help somebody? Can I make a difference? And before you answer that, one thing I always told the teens is, can a mosquito inside a tent make a difference to the person who's sleeping in the tent? It's 100% yes, even though that little itty bitty mosquito is bugging this big gigantic person. You can never underestimate yourself. What you have is valuable. What you've lived is valuable. So before you answered that, I had to clear that part up of the fact that I do believe even teens, even some kids will teach you stuff. It's the innocence of the heart. So go ahead, answer. Sorry.
That's awesome. No, I love it. Yeah, I think there's a great quote by Betty Reese, I think, says something similar about mosquito. I love that illustration, though. It's beautiful. And, I love also sharing the quote of Bill Simon that said, "I was born on third base and thought I hit a triple." And so that's just to say that, look, I've been given, I was born on third base. So I've been given way more opportunities than a lot of people have. And I don't take that for granted at all. And, I'm trying to take ownership of that and use it to the best of my ability. But with that, I think we, like you just said, we can learn from everyone, every single person, even kids, especially kids, right? We learn the most often from kids because we're trying to return to that childlike wonder and awe and innocence that we had and we evolve out of, when really a lot of times it's helpful to get back there.
Yeah, sometimes you get so far into the world that you can't find your way back. So you need to pull yourself back and kind of start all over again. Go back to your roots and start over and move forward from there.
Yeah, and what you were asking in the question is really the imposter syndrome that I think anybody who is journeying into some type of entrepreneurship or self-employment or starting their own thing, every single person experiences that, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, and no matter what stage of life you're in. So we all will experience that. So I think the first thing is always recognizing it. Like, look, I'm feeling this right now. I think it's normal. It's natural. And having that experience in several different realms helps. In golf, I experienced that when I turned professional. Like, oh man, I'm trying to figure this out, and it took me like a year.
With all these big boys here with me.
Yeah, and it took me a year to realize that I was looking to every other golfer for their blueprint for success, when really I just needed to look to myself and what worked for me. And I had to learn what was best for me, not what's best for Joe or Bob or all these other people, So, I'm
one of those people that have always gone against the grain. Growing up, I played softball. I'm one of those weird people who, when I hold the bat, my hands are separated and it's on my shoulder. So when I go to hit it, I grew up playing hockey. When I go to hit softball, it's going to snap my wrist a lot faster because I'm used to it with a hockey stick. So my softball coach for the longest time could try and tell me, put your hands together. You need to put your hands together and get that bat off your shoulder. Every time I did that, I would barely get it out of the infield. And finally, he just, you know what? Do what works for you, because that works for you. And I popped it into the outfield the next hit. And it's awesome. You have to learn what works for you. When I was a counselor for like 5 to 7 years, I learned from other counselors. I didn't follow one counselor's blueprint. I got a little bit from Freud. I got a little bit from Adler. I got a little bit from a couple other people. And I came up with what works for me. So like you were saying with golf, you have to come up with what works for you. And the same thing of teaching others. How I teach somebody, I'm pretty blunt. I'm one of those people that will be honest and blunt. So people usually either love me or they hate me. And I've learned to know that. And so I'm okay with that. You had to learn how to help guide people yourself. What worked for you may not work for somebody else. What works for one person when you're teaching them may not work for somebody else. There's somebody that I can reach that you can't, and there's somebody that you can reach that I can't. And that's what makes us all fit into, the family of humanity as well as the family of God.
Totally.
Regardless of which family you're looking at, we're all human, and we all bring to the plate different aspects of our life who make us who we are.
Yeah,
how did you get over that hump, though?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I think there's some helpful things for me in that. One, I had a brother-in-law who was already in the coaching world. And so I learned a lot secondhand from him and his experience of what that entailed, what that process was like, which gave me some confidence. And then really I took 4 to 5 months where I had a handful of friends. I said, hey, look, I think I want to try to create a business out of this. I don't know yet if it's able to do that. And so I want to come alongside you and just test it out, test the product, test the service, see if it's helpful. I have this theory, let's test it. And so through about 4 or 5 months with a handful of friends and working with them, I was able to prove the concept and say, yeah, no, this is giving people value and it's worth something. And so then it's putting your money where your mouth is and say, I'm going to start charging for this. And that's scary, right? You're like, what? How do I charge for a service? It feels weird. You feel inauthentic. and you have to go through all of the mental battles that you face. And I think some really important takeaways just for people that are listening and that I learned from the journey is just that, one, no one has it figured out. Everyone's making it up. So if you look at really any company, any business,
you make it.
and yeah, any business, any company, you know, the more corporate, the more it feels professional and the more it feels like figured out, but they're all still trying to figure it out. No one has this perfect plan that works all the time. Life is constantly moving. It's dynamic. And for us to think that there's some formula that just always applies is just wrong. And so, like you said, in that we do need to learn from others and from the prescribed universal principles that work most of the time. That's the first step always. But then we have to move into the individual principles from those by knowing who we are and how we best operate, like you were talking about earlier. So the first is just we're all trying to figure it out. And the second is that you have value and gifts and abilities that serve an important piece of the puzzle. And it's not the whole puzzle. So don't make it the whole puzzle, which is a temptation that we all have. But if you understand that it's your piece, your offering, and your gifting, it allows you to step forward in that and say, hey, look, I'm not here to serve everyone, but there's people that I know I can serve. And my job is to find those people and come alongside them. And so I think that's helpful in just clarifying we don't need to be everything to everyone. But we need to be who we are to the people that we are called to serve in our work or in our lives. And so those were some really helpful things for me. And it's a hard journey, you know, it's not glamorous. It's not sexy. You know, a lot of people glamorize being an entrepreneur or going the self-employed route. And it's not for everyone.
No, you have to be a self-starter. You have to push and persevere. And it is hard. My sister and I launched a publishing company in December of last year. We guinea pigged on ourselves, our own books, and learned a lot. And we started accepting clients in August. And half the time we're like, you know, we have to guinea pig this fruit with you. Do you mind walking this with us? And some are like, sure, no problem. I don't mind. But you got to take those steps and you have to persevere. And it's going to cost a lot of time. It's not a 9-to-5 thing. I promise you it's not a 9-to-5 thing. It's going to take a while before you even remotely reach that point. You just have to continue to push forward and continue to go forward with what you know is in your heart and what you know you're here to do. You know, what is your purpose?
Yeah, you know, and just to underscore that, you know, I think the biggest key character trait to instill at the beginning and throughout is humility, like you just brought up. The humility to be honest and be like, hey, we're kind of guinea pigging this right now. Are you good with that? You know, because honestly, we just need a level of people. Don't try to be something you're not. I think the imposter syndrome that we all experience, it makes us feel like we need to be more professional than we are. We need to be more serious. We need to be more polished. When really people appreciate authenticity and honesty of just leveling like, hey, I'm coming to you with humility. Like, this is where I'm at. And then the hard part with that is not only starting with it, but continuing with that, being like, you know, 3 years in, I'm still figuring it out. You know, I don't know. I'm trying this out or I'm trying that out. And there's something within us that hates that because we want to have it all figured out. We want to arrive, but it's just reminding ourselves that we're all in that process of becoming, and hopefully in that process our entire lives. Because I don't want to be at a place where we arrive at a destination in this life, because there isn't one that we just hang out at.
And as fluid as the world is, there's no way you're ever going to get there. I mean, think about the times have changed from 1900 to 1950 versus 1950 to even 2000, let alone 2000 to 2020. The world is in a fast track going at Mach 10. There is no way you can figure it out, because as soon as you do, someone's going to turn around and change everything. Look at Facebook. Every time you turn around, they're changing something, and you got to figure out, oh crud, how do I find that now? You know, stores all the time are even moving their stuff around, which is very painful. You know, don't get stuck in a rut. We have about 5 or so minutes left before we start to hit that close point. I want to talk about your different ventures, because you have your fingers in a lot of pies, so to speak. You have a book, blog, and a podcast. Can you take a few minutes to share about each one of those?
Yeah. So the book, I had one came out in 2018, and the one that just came out this past month is called Catalyst for Hope. It's all about unlocking energy, optimism, and your full potential through this thing called hope. And it's always readily available and able to be used. We just have to reframe our perspective on some things. And so really it's just sharing 4 simple perspectives and reframes that I've found to really unlock a lot of hope in my life and be a great fuel and energy for continuing to push forward, even despite often a hopeless feeling time. It feels hopeless a lot of times, especially if you look at America and where our country is today. But the reality is hope is always available. So that's the whole point of the book.
Yeah, it's kind of like sitting in a dark room. You feel like you're in a dark room, but as soon as you light a little itty bitty match, that room still lights up. So
Yeah.
don't ever lose that hope. Don't ever lose that spark. How about the blog or the podcast?
Yeah, so the blog's on my website, and that's just a place for me to keep people up to date with some thoughts or things. And really, honestly, writing is a great way to figure things out. So I write to learn. I write to understand concepts. And when there's something that intrigues me, I often say, I want to write about that. And so I put it into blogs. And that's a fun part of my website. And with that, I just launched 2 online courses that are going to be around taking ownership and never settling. And so that's what I've been most excited about with the website. They're going to be helping people grow in self-awareness, which is key for taking ownership, and then helping people develop discipline, which is ultimately what never settling is all about. So those are 2 8-week courses that I'm really excited. I've been working a lot on those, a lot of time and effort. And so just to get those into people's hands is what I'm most excited about right now.
I mean, if people find out who they are, because a lot of times people are told who they are, they need to figure out who they are themselves. So that self-awareness and self-figuring out of what am I here for? What is my passion? What is my goal? What is, my dream, not somebody else's, what's mine? And if I'm understanding correctly, that's kind of where you start and build from there.
Yeah. Yep. It's a big part about self-discovery, like you said. And really self-awareness isn't, it's a very common like word thrown around and it's an idea thrown around, but we get lost in like the ethereal nature of it. What does that mean? But I think it's really simple. And the process to do it is really simple. And so what I'm doing in the course is just saying, hey, here's a 3-step process and here's some tools. And this is why it matters. And that's ultimately what it's all about, so that people can latch onto that and then go through that process themselves, like you said.
Okay. And the podcast.
The podcast is the Up and Comer Show. That's been going for 4 years, and it's all about the process of becoming, learning how to live a good life and what it takes to live with intention in the tension, which is a kind of our mantra that life has these tensions between 2 polar opposite things, and we have to live in the gray, in the middle, in the messy, uncertain, kind of uncomfortable place. But that's the beautiful place, because life's a dance. And so that helps us embrace the dance of it versus try to like camp out on one side or the other. So we do long form interviews with people, breaking down their stories, and then just share other things we're learning along the way. It's been a really fun journey. It's kind of been a passion project, but people want to find out, they can go to theupandcomershow.com.
Awesome. So how do they find you online to find your book, your blog, and your podcast? Because I think all of that's on the same site. They can at least get to it. How do they find you online?
Yeah, thanemarcus.com is the headquarters for everything. So it'll have links for everything there. And I'd love to connect with people if they reach out online.
Can you spell that out for those who are listening, please?
Yeah, ThaneMarcus, ThaneMarcus.com.
Awesome. We have about 3 minutes left. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I would just encourage people. I guess there's one quote that I really love recently. It's this guy, Daniel Taylor. And he said, few things are as encouraging in life is that that things can be different and you have a role in making them so. And so the point is just to say that it's encouraging that we each have an individual role that we can play in bringing about the change we wish to see in the world. And it always starts with you. It always starts with me. It always starts with CJ, right? Mm-hmm. Leadership, it always starts with self-leadership. And so every day we have an opportunity to become better self-leaders, better leaders of ourselves, so that we can hopefully then be better leaders of others. And that better leaders of others isn't, to have this massive following, this massive audience, this massive applause or recognition, but to impact the one. How can you just impact one person? And that one person then could impact 3 people, and that compound effect of it that could bring about more good and more hope and more change for justice and the right things, the good things that we all long for in society. It starts with leading ourselves well. That's the initial impulse. So it's just a plea that I want to be doing that, and I want you to be doing that, and I want CJ to be doing that, because when we all individually do that, collectively, there could be a lot of awesome things that we see.
Definitely. That's what you just said. It reminded me of the story of the grandfather and the grandson who were walking along the shore. And there was a storm the night before, so a lot of starfish were washed up on the shore. And the little boy takes one and he throws it in the water. And the grandpa's like, son, you can't save them all. He goes, no, but I can save this one. And he threw it back in. So, you can't help them all, but there are ones that you are led to help. And maybe it's a matter of, you can't help the person, but somebody else who can, because it is more their style. And so kind of connecting that way and finding that out. But, my sister and I did a North Texas Book Festival. We were the featured authors, and we did our speaking on, you got to start somewhere. It doesn't matter, whatever your dream is, honestly, it can be applied across the board. You have to start somewhere. And when you start into that field, other people will start to come behind you and help you and guide you because somebody else did it for them. And the more that we help people and the more we help guide people toward that hope and, the strength of who they are, the better off humanity as a whole will be.
100%. I love it.
Well, I do thank you for coming on today, Thane. Again, those who are listening, if you'd like to find out more about him, you go to thanemarcus.com. That's ThaneMarcus.com. And thank you guys for listening to The Journey is Real today, where we talk to real people with real passions who share a real portion of their hearts. I'm CJ Peterson of CJPetersonWrites.com. Until next time.